Hello, the weather is changing. It's getting a bit more nippy. Strawberries and cream, end of June, but also peaches, something that's really close to my heart. Peaches was always featured in my birthdays. We've been watching catch up with Wimbledon, watching players I've never heard of beating players who keep talking about retirement, who I have heard of. Welcome to the Internet Seriously, a humorous look at tech news and politics. I'm Lucian Taylor in Oxford.
And I'm Emily Taylor in Oxford.
And I'm Alice Taylor, also in Oxford.
Hello, so coming up today, Glastonbury. Are we feeling our music enough? How do we measure feelings of music? Next, the FBI busted a real-life terrorist attack that was planned on Roblox. What does this tell us about online children's spaces and online safety? And finally, the tech giant, the CDN tech giant Cloudflare, is offering millions of websites a game-changing AI bot blocker by default. Is the fight against content scraping for AI answers hotting up? Before we kick off with Emily's topic about Glastonbury, please remember to share, follow and like us. Sometimes in this podcast we have links at the bottom of the screen, and sometimes we don't, but I'm going to carry on as though we do there. But we are available on all the usual things. Please subscribe and follow us. Emily, this is a topic that you suggested, obviously very seasonal. We've just had Glastonbury. We're now just attending Glastonbury virtually here and there, catching up with bands or people like Ray, who I've never heard of before, but I thought was fantastic. But you've been doing a bit of reading, and we've been trying to join the dots with a topic that you're interested in, and Glastonbury. Tell us more about it, please.
Yeah, well, we were watching Glastonbury on Catch Up, and this is my kind of type.
Oh, just to say, we've got some links and buttons
Hooray,
for people to
links.
click on. Please do. I think it's when I'm on the screen, the buttons can't appear. So what we'll do is we'll get the camera to switch over to you, and then we can share those rare, valuable buttons. Thank you.
So attending Glastonbury in my front room is my kind of festival going, because it's like your own toilet. And
in the front room.
Not in the front room, in your house. And
you've also got the best view.
You've got the best view.
Filmed amazingly, best sound quality.
You don't have to be in 30 plus degree heat in a tent. So lots to recommend it. And I really enjoyed Ray's set. I hadn't really come across her before, and I thought her vocal range, her show was amazing. But I was also really incredibly...
Followed by Neil Young, who's the same range if you measure it over decades.
What was left of Neil Young, is an icon to me, and an incredibly important
Was he the
musical...
Sunday headliner?
Yeah. Also loved Pulp, because Pulp is the sound of our generation, and also... your cousin, our niece Eleanor, is friends with one of his nieces or nephews, and used to come across him a lot, sort of around having tea at their house.
So Uncle
Jarvis.
Uncle Jarvis arrives.
Uncle Jarvis did everyone proud and put on a fabulous show. But I was also really struck by how much Ray meant to the audience, because I think her backstory, I believe, is that she talks a lot about kind of sexual harassment in the music industry, about her own sexual experiences of sexual harassment, and she was dropped by music labels, told to write happier things, I think. And I was really struck by how much her lyrics and her message resonated with the audience, and there were particularly young women there who were just like crying, singing along, completely into the whole thing. And it really made me think about the music music's power to get people at an emotional level, that it is so much more satisfying than language in a way. And at the same time, this week has been the week of a school reunion. It's 40 years since I left school. And I didn't make it to the reunion, sadly, but there's now a WhatsApp group of all of us, and we're kind of connecting with each other for the first time for 40 years. And one of my very close friends at the time became a music therapist, and I ended up just sort of looking for her stuff online and found her PhD thesis, and it's on exactly the same thing, which is about how music therapy and all the therapies are funded based on their results, based on, what can you prove about this intervention? How do you put it in language that funders will understand?
Now, we do a lot of research, don't we? And
we do.
Alice, you're preparing research grant applications and things like that. They keep asking, don't they, just to interrupt a second, for proof or impact, what change you're going to make, outcome measures.
Yeah.
It's very challenging measures to have, isn't
very
it?
challenging.
I was you're
really
studying the
interested in
world,
this.
but how are you going to change the world?
Yeah, I was really interested because I'm a speech and language therapist as my background. I'm trained in having to measure outcomes to show that you've made a meaningful impact on somebody. And I think, and I have worked with a music therapist before, and I've watched them in action. And it is really interesting to me that there is it seems like, there's not much money in music therapy because of this whole issue of measuring impact. And actually, I sort of had quite a different view to you, because in my background, I've learned many, many ways of quantifying and measuring non-language changes in somebody. So someone who's had like a severe stroke and they can no longer speak, but they can do a lot to communicate. And there's lots of ways of quantifying that. And I think it's sort of like those tools maybe haven't made their way across to the music therapy world, but they are still very meaningful.
So, tell us a bit more then about this research that interested you.
That I think that part of it also is like that was embedded in your training. And what she was saying is like she trained in the kind of early 90s, I think. And evidence-based policy was introduced by the Blair government really as a reaction to the very ideologically driven policy of the Thatcher government. So it's not like we do this because we believe it's right in here.
Yeah.
We do this because the evidence shows that it is effective, and that sort of releases you from the tyranny of ideology. But of course, anything also has its own tyranny. And I was really interested because, you've thought about all of this in your training, but it was quite new to me, how reductive language is, how difficult it is to really put into words the emotion that music really gets to. And there's one bit in this writing that really struck me. She's saying, I could write a classical music score that would encapsulate all of the different strains and the polyphony of the way music affects you, or this case, but language I have to reduce to one single narrative line. And we all come across it when we're trying to put the big emotions into language. We sound like idiots. We're not all Shakespeare can do, and then we're drawn to poetry and drawn to music because it does it for us.
But you're also required throughout life to do these unemotional hard measures. What is the value of your business financially? What is the value of your business
I have something
in turnover?
to say about this, which is there's been this whole sort of tagline of what I'd call the manosphere and the alt-right, which has been facts don't care about your feelings for the last kind of 2 decades. And it's this idea, that it used to be sort of seen as like irrefutable biological evidence about the differences between, say, men and women's bodies that makes them designed for different roles and behaviours. And actually now it feels like there's this kind of re-evaluation. I saw a video recently called Facts Do Care About Your Feelings, actually, and always have. And that actually, as a researcher, I feel like everything is you research something because you care about it. You don't just do it because of the numbers. And actually, I think humans are way more driven by feelings-based arguments than, well, the evidence says this. It just doesn't cut through.
It absolutely doesn't. So my request to you, data analyst and speech therapist, is let's go back to Glastonbury and let's think about the crowd and their reaction to the different acts. How do we measure that in a way that would get funding? Lucian.
Well, I actually approach that as a data analyst, and so I'm looking at crowd analysis. And when you look at crowd analysis, you're looking at crowd control, behaviour monitoring that's already there. So I would actually be looking for things like real-time insights into crowd activity, density, movement patterns, and unusual activity. And when you specifically think about that in terms of AI and tools for measuring audience appreciation and emotion and interaction, there are tools there. So you've got facial recognition and emotional recognition in algorithms already that can analyze facial expressions from video feeds, providing there are ethical things about proper consent and privacy considerations. But if you say you're already getting comedians who are being able to find out, reviewing crowds, exactly when a joke landed, or for a musician, moments of intense engagement, or even a sense of awe. You're now getting AI patterns and algorithms that can do this. So if I was looking at the emotional response, the collective, I would go to crowds. I would certainly go to, because crowds are big data by default. And I would start to look at those technologies which look at pattern management, energy, and they can look at people who are dancing to a high energy band and those sorts of things.
I think
Then
so.
it
If
moves,
I wanted to get funding to measure the impact of a Glastonbury performance, I would take it away from emotions. I wouldn't talk about emotions in my funding application because that gets everybody very anxious. I'd look at, like you said, quantifiable stuff that's already there, quite boring. How many people are in the crowd? Volume of audience appreciation, movement patterns. I'd make it quite
I was
boring.
going to say there is also I agree with you. There is also a bridge into neuro-linguistic programming and coupling that audience energy analysis with social media and mentions and things like that as well, which come together. You can't beat it. There's been a terrible event with the loss of a football player from Liverpool today. That is there is an outpouring of energy on social media. There are crowds gathering at Liverpool. That is something you can't avoid, and you can certainly measure it. When a concert works at Glastonbury, everybody talks about it.
But this is something, I know we need to move on, but this is something that we know as performers. When your performance has landed, and almost, I think, the quantity stuff, I think you're brilliant, you get the application, but it's sort of, about proving to something that we know innately as humans, and we're sort of losing that trust in ourselves to go, I know as a performer, as a comedian, that was a good night. I know as a musician, I kind of lit up this audience, but it's, when you put it into quant terms, it's more science-ifying, but it's telling us what we already know.
And I think that's a lot of what the proof is about, is that you find that. I was using the analogy of being some creepy noise behind me. I think one of the plants is moving or something. All of your business activity boils down to, at the end of the year, a statement for the tax authorities. And that is what you are judged by as a measure of success or failure, not about the deeply cultural things that happen in an organisation. And nobody asks you to measure it. But I think the question is being asked to measure it. We want to actually know the emotive impact as well. So we are going to move on. But before that, it's time for our Guilty Pleasure Online.
Lucian,
Have either of you done your homework?
No.
This is serious, this podcast. We've got to actually do our homework. We can't just go about neuro-linguistic programming and music. We've actually got to be prepared for this.
Okay, my guilty pleasure online is doing my work.
Wow, that's so
Oh, the
wild.
And that's
thing
why
every day.
I have
Why-
the interesting social
Oh,
life.
I've got one. I've got one.
I do have one, but let's hear it.
So mine is, have you heard the Jet2 holiday advert jingle?
No.
No.
Okay, well, it's basically this music that's really popular, and this woman is like, nothing beats a Jet2 holiday, and you can now save £50. And for some reason, it's been around for years, but it's completely, gone viral, as we used to say, this summer, because I think the musician who recorded the song has been performing at festivals, and so people are holding up signs that are like, nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. And this is somebody who has a voice changer to sound like a Dalek from Doctor Who doing the Jet2 holiday.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. And right now, you can save 50 credits per person. That's 200 credits off a family of 4. We've got millions of free descendant-based holidays available.
This is
That's
fabulous.
it.
Thank
That's
you
my
so
guilty
much.
pleasure
Thank you very
online.
much for that. Well, I
Yeah.
will park my guilty pleasure online till then. But I was actually talking the other day. We were talking about the Old Spice advert, and someone in my family. Oh yeah, no, yeah, we all know that. And da 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 da. It's a huge piece of music that get an earworm. So anyway, the FBI has busted a real-life terrorist attack that was planned on Roblox. Alice, what's this about?
So I think we've got a picture of the Roblox crime being committed. So this is a real world attack.
Can you just
there it
do a
is.
bit of what is Roblox?
So for anyone who doesn't know, Roblox is...
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at some Lego.
Yeah, it looks
talking
quite
to
like
each
Lego.
other?
So the person in white is the person who has been arrested for his crime.
But they are a piece of Lego. I don't
yeah,
understand.
so you, sort
How
of,
does
you
the
make
FBI...
a character. So I've played Roblox before.
there's a human behind that.
There's a human behind it. So I used to play Roblox because I would support autistic children and teenagers, and it was during the pandemic, and it was like, we need to have a social group, but there's the pandemic, so what do we do? Let's all play Roblox together. So you go on as your little Lego person.
You're a sort of character that you...
and it's like people make different games, and so the two games that we played, so it's kind of like crowdsourcing game creation. They'd used Roblox to make a shark game. So
Nice.
one person in the group would randomly become a shark, and everyone else would have to swim away. And there was another one called Hole in the Wall, where your character would have a wall coming towards them with a shape cut out, and you'd have to make your character like
The
do
shape,
the shape
to survive.
to not be knocked into like some lava
Or crushed.
So that's what Roblox
Yeah.
is. Very popular among
So this
children
guy
and
called
teenagers.
Berger,
This guy, James W. Berger.
he's made terrorist threats with his Lego character.
Allegedly.
A man from Texas, and I did a lot of research about this. I watched a very long video trying to just understand like what his actual beliefs were, and it seems like he's got a kind of alt-right vibe, but also was radicalized into being a Sunni Muslim who wanted to kill Shia Muslims. So there's just a lot going on. And I was watching this video, and this person was saying, like, actually, it wasn't just him. It was like 5 people all going onto this server, this game called Church, which is a place where lots of people with very strong political views assemble and just kind of talk about stuff. And what I thought was interesting is they only got caught, or he only got caught. The other 4 or 5 people are still out there just talking about whatever they want to. They were only caught because somebody online reported it. So there was nothing in Roblox's kind of content moderation, which is pretty robust. Like they're very active.
I want to come back to the getting caught bit, because there is some interesting things around that and that are very related to our global signal exchange and the type of things we're talking about. And I'll come back to you on that, Emily. But first of all, just to get my head around this, Roblox is, forgive me if I'm wrong, a large percentage of whom are children playing on there.
Lots of children
and the
and
kids
teenagers.
interact with their friends and strangers.
Yeah.
And it faces persistent challenges as a platform with inappropriate content and interactions, because children are exposed to inappropriate content, including sexualized avatars, violent games, and crude humour, cyberbullying, and stuff like that. But Roblox does implement parental controls and safety features. So it seems that in this case of organised terrorism, the
Parental
control
didn't quite do the job.
Right. Okay. So what's the gap here?
It's very interesting because I've been sort of researching, like, why is it that places like Discord and Roblox and Snapchat are used to conduct things like child sexual exploitation, which at the moment is the number one way in which children are exploited commercially. And there's an increased amount of children being sexually exploited, so sort of blackmailed with explicit pictures. And a lot of the time, these stories can be really tragic. They can end really, really badly. Roblox are quite active in their child protection. They've done a lot.
Sure.
They've had a lot of problems, and they've done a lot because where you have a lot of children, you've also got a lot of predators. But what I thought was kind of remarkable was on the 13th of March, the CEO and co-founder Dave Baszucki, co-founder of Roblox, said, if you're not comfortable, don't let your kids be on Roblox, which to me was didn't really match with the efforts that Roblox has made to protect children. And it sort of felt to me, I'm always quite struck by how much we very quickly just take children offline. We take them off the internet, we take them away. We do a sort of abstinence approach to online safety. And my background as a speech therapist was working with adults, very vulnerable adults with learning disabilities. And there was a notable case where an adult had their social media use limited, and the judge found it to be a violation of their human rights under the Mental Capacity Act. And so, the British Medical Journal this year have published findings that a total abstinence approach is an unrealistic and potentially detrimental approach to protecting children online.
Yeah, so this sort of binary approach of like
just
accept it or leave is falling short. And Emily, so that takes me to the global signal exchange, because actually at the heart of this was something that you mentioned, which was almost like a neighbourhood watch report. And what we've been doing at the global signal exchange is trying to encourage the organisation itself to get into threat reporting, is to say, I think we may have an actor on here. We don't have enough evidence to sort of go through £250,000 fraud case or an action against them, but we're worried, could everybody else in the ecosystem look at this? Now, how did the FBI get him? They got him in two ways. Number one was electronic device searches, which is actually gives the game away on the whole necessary backdoor ways for FBI and law enforcement, public safety to actually get behind and underneath electronic devices. I hope Apple is listening. But the other one that got me was through billing information. That wherever you've got accounts or sign-ups, you've usually got the banks.
Follow the money is often a very powerful way of just exploring, other information. You mentioned it, Lucian. At the end of the year, you have to sum up your entire business activity through the medium of your accounts. And the accounts really tell a story. You can tell what people are doing because of what they've transacted. But the link back to the global signal exchanges is right. If you can join up payment activity with other things that may or may not be suspicious, then it gives you that insight, and it's that community approach, replicating the village type of thing, the curtain twitching of the village, the neighbourhood watch thing, which is like, if one person thinks something looks dodgy, so what? If everybody from different perspectives is like, that's looking a bit funny from the way you can immediately see where the risks of that approach would arise. So you need proper safeguards. However, at the same time, that amplification, that sort of the overlap gives you more confidence in pursuing a potential lead.
Thank you very much. So Roblox, please get in touch with the Global Signal Exchange. There is a middle way. You don't have to, you don't have to ask people to leave your business, leave your service, leave the environment that's so fun for most people. that there is a middle way, and that is the GSE, Global Signal Exchange. Please get in touch. Before we move on to our next thing, which is about the tech giant, the CDN content delivery network tech giant Cloudflare's move against AI bot crawlers, it's time for our Tech Room 101.
Room 101.
Obviously, I'm bursting to do a Tech Room 101, but I've been banned. I'm not allowed to do a Tech Room 101.
I think on
Alice,
this
you could
occasion,
do one
Alice,
this
I
week.
think we'll let Lucian do his Tech Room 101
Oh no,
today.
I'm confused by the information I'm getting. I'm bewildered because I thought this
You're
was
allowed
something
to
that was
do a
not
Tech
good.
Room 101 as long as it's not just like an old person vibe.
Oh,
You're not
okay.
allowed to just be
So-
an old guy.
so
like, oh,
I'm
I
facing-
hate these new
I hate
I'm-
the internet.
things that the young
facing
people are doing.
discrimination. Let's say it. It's pure discrimination based upon my apparent age.
It's not
You know,
about. I could make
I'm
old,
feeling discriminated
old
when
man
you don't-
shouting at cloud complaints, and it's not
So,
to do with your age. It's just the vibe.
I'm happy, but I realise
of
the
the Tech
rules
Room
have
101.
changed where it suits you two.
Yes.
Because you haven't done your homework, and now
Maybe.
I'm allowed
I
to.
did the guilty pleasure online, so I'm not doing this one.
Recorded messages from calls to me.
Oh, yes.
They're slightly more annoying than pressure SMS messages asking me to pay a parking bill or face a bigger fine. Hello, this is a message for Lucien Taylor. If you are the owner of a hire purchase vehicle, you may be entitled to a rebate. Click. I cannot bear recorded messages that when I pick up the phone that's phoning me, I'm listening to a recorded message. That goes into my Tech Room 101.
That's allowed.
And
That's
I'm,
allowed.
I'm,
That's
I'm
allowed.
really
I find that
sorry.
annoying
as
I'm really
well.
sorry to say that, and I'm sorry that that's from an old person.
It's not about it being from an old person.
Quick, backpedal,
It's
quickly,
about the
quickly. You've got to get
vibe.
out of
It's
this
about
because
the-
don't
know.
worry, you will not be attacked by a million octogenarians. So the tech giant Cloudflare, the content delivery network offerer, is offering millions of websites a game-changing AI bot blocker, by default. So if you get a new Cloudflare account, which is a free account, it switches that on by default. So it's basically whatever you're trying to index on your website or share with the world, let's say you want to, it's not going to be visible to AI robots. So our question is the fight against content scraping for AI answers hotting up? Emily, you've written a number, published quite a bit of research. With that research, what do you want? Do you want it to just sort of be available for private sharing, or do you want it available on the internet for others to see? What do you want to do with that research?
I just want people to read it.
Right.
And I don't mind if those people are bots, honestly. There's two things I'd like to just reflect on that. It's obviously part of a really difficult debate on the training of AI tools and the sort of social equity towards the content creators, because they're not going to end up being enriched by this activity. Other people are. So, number one, what I'd like to say is, what is not blocked? So what it is. So let's imagine the world where this happens. So Cloudflare customers' stuff is blocked. And what is not blocked? The not blocked will be overly weighted in terms of the training material. And there's an analogy here with firewalled news content. Obviously, the internet has really disrupted the business model of traditional news media, and a lot of the quality has gone behind paywalls. What has not gone behind paywalls? Conspiracy theories. Radical and very extreme views which are not subject to any editorial policy. So the content that's behind paywalls is not available to be scraped. The stuff that is out there in the world is crazy shit that you don't want your AI spouting back at you. So it's sort of, it's back to your point, Alice, about the sort of abstinence approach. It's it's interesting that Cloudflare are taking this approach. They're staking a position in the debate, which is very interesting. And that very quickly, to finish, my other reflection on it is the default versus opt-in. And Alice, this goes back to a book you recommended to me ages ago, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And he shows that organ donation completely changed when you went from an opt-in model where you get typically less than 1% do it,
make a decision,
to you're opted in by default and it's up to you to opt out, and then you get more than 90% uptake. So default settings are really, really, really important.
And just some of the facts here. Cloudflare represents approximately 20% of the world's websites, so it's a huge player in this website market. The reality is that it's going to be burying by default most of the content that it's actually covering, unless people engage in this game. So before I talk about my reaction to that as an engineer, Alice, I wanted to this thing about the artist and the artist's primary work, and that being, on the one hand, hyper available through the internet, but on the other, just being copied. And we've been hearing from Elton John. There's government select committees. We've been hearing from Dua Lipa, who's joined in the discussion.
This is like theft on an enormous scale, I think, is what Elton John said. Is that, I feel a lot for digital artists at the moment, where it's like you must feel like you're watching something doing your job worse, stealing your original works online, and there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of outcry, quite rightly, from artists who don't want their work just taken by the thing that is kind of replacing them. Right.
I think that ethical thing, that sort of rewarding the artist, is on the face of it behind Cloudflare's decision. So there's which I'm actually very interested in. It's always paradoxical how that ends up in reality, because at the moment people put stuff on the internet to be crawled by Google, to be indexed by search engines, so that it becomes available to everybody else. And you're saying your research, you did have to do that, but you're also savvy enough.
In the research world, you're never going to really be paid by anybody reading your stuff.
Well, I think
but the ideas yourself, attribution is a huge deal in the research world. Just taking we came across a paper the other day, I won't say who by, but really it just ripped off all of the findings that we had done in a study, which we had taken 6 months to do, and crunched a lot of data and interviewed a lot of people for. Yeah. And that lack of attribution is a lack of courtesy, but it also goes to, it's then that people holding out that work as their own.
Yes. So so what you're saying is you're not really interested in this area. You would if you had written songs or poetry.
Absolutely,
or whatever. But in this area, you're not interested in financial reward, but attribution and blocking AI crawlers is not really going to do that, unless the AI, and I've noticed a lot of AI results do attribution. Yeah. They do attribution links within the AI answers, certainly a lot of the AI that I use. But the promise from Cloudflare is a pay-per-crawl initiative designed to empower publishers to monetize their content when accessed by AI companies. One thing is, is this realistic? Are people?
Can you explain what that means, pay per crawl?
Well, basically, you can open up your content for AI crawling, but the AI bots
have to pay.
So it's creating a commercial relationship with this content delivery network.
That sounds quite good, actually.
It sounds good. Yeah. I suspect that it's going to be good for Cloudflare as well. And what I hope as an engineer is that Cloudflare is dealing with a very, very major problem on the internet, which is called DDoS, which is a denial of service attack that little organizations cannot afford to mitigate. So you all sit behind Cloudflare, which is one of the only big players out there that offers. And so it's a bit like, yes, you can have your little tiny website. Let's imagine that the internet is a high street, okay? And you've got lots of little shops. And what the DDoS attackers do is they can send 3 million people into your shop and you have to serve all of those people and none of them are buying anything. They're just cruising the shop. But during that time, you're working hard. You're working your servers to death and you don't make a single sale. A DDoS attack is a nightmare for an engineer.
Yes.
Cloudflare says, we've got some great big bouncers in our nightclub. So you can put your website in our nightclub and it's free. And so you've got your website, and it's a dilly little thing, and you put it in your nightclub, and that's where you live with your website. And if anybody wants to know where your table is, they have to ask Cloudflare, and Cloudflare bouncers will show them, but nobody gives away your address. I'm hoping that out of this, the AI crawlers and people like that, the bot providers who've got lots of money at the moment, will up the competitive game with DDoS protection. They will actually get it to that and offer engineers and website hosters an alternative to Cloudflare altogether, because they'll be so pissed off about having their AI bot crawlers monitorized. So
yeah, my feeling
I think
is
it'll be a
that
paradoxical effect.
It's a lovely idea. I think that the bot providers will probably just go, oh, let's just use the free content. And I think that probably the solution is around collection societies for artists and them standing up for a fairer deal for artists and content creators, and which is it's an established model on different older media.
Yeah, I wonder if we put a paywall in front of our website, how many people would actually pay. So anyway, thank you very much. We're just about out of time. Before we finally sign off today on this sunny day in Oxford, do we have a comment of the week?
We do have a comment of the week. So it was from last week. We were talking about AI therapists and the ethics of AI therapists. And somebody commented, one big thing we need to tackle is agreeableness. Models will currently always agree, which can be extremely damaging in some cases. Defo need guidelines and to work out where it fits within a wider framework, as you say.
This is
who did that come from?
Yes.
Someone called I am Kyle Balmer.
I am Kyle Balmer. Thank you very much for that comment. That's really interesting because the models are worried about being toxic or encouraging people to do negative things. But sometimes therapy is about saying what people don't want to hear
it's also,
as much as what they do. Wouldn't
I think
you say?
also in an emergency, validating how somebody feels is very important. But I think, as you know, Kyle Balmer is saying, we need ethical guidelines just to make sure it's all safe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, really appreciate the comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before we finally sign off, please hit subscribe to this channel. And oh, by the way, let's put the camera on one of these. Please hit subscribe to this channel because for some reason those buttons can go onto those people. Thank you very much. We've been talking about Glastonbury and are we feeling our music enough and how do we measure feelings. The FBI has busted a real-life terrorist attack that was planned on Roblox, and the tech CDN giant is trying to help Elton John and Dua Lipa. Thanks a lot.